Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, and the black fraternity all over the world, there is a dangerous trend tearing the motherland apart, denying its people the progress they hope to see, and threatening Africa's democratic future. This trend? The systematic transformation of republics into de facto monarchies. While these countries maintain the facade of democratic institutions, their leaders have effectively become kings in all but name, consolidating power through constitutional manipulation, family succession planning, and the systematic dismantling of democratic safeguards. We are going to pinpoint those African leaders and the countries that have transformed into monarchies, so stay firm, and if you are new here, remember to share this video, like, and comment, telling us where you are watching from and what the situation in your country is like. Our forefathers like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and Patrice Lumumba laid themselves bare on the cross for an independent Africa. They traded their blood, sweat, and lives for a cause they cherished. They dreamt of an Africa free from oppression, where its people lived in liberty, united for a good cause. Little did they know, the colonial master was not simply white. Even their fellow African leaders would colonize their own people after the departure of the white man. Republics that Africans fought to defend, terming them their motherlands, have been taken over by puppet leaders, transforming them into personal property at the expense of citizens. Now, this isn't just about politics, it's about the future of 1.4 billion Africans and their right to self-determination. Let's examine how this alarming trend is unfolding across the continent, and most importantly, the danger this poses to African democracy and progress. African leaders turned monarchs have a common playbook with 5 chapters: constitutional manipulation, institutional capture, dynasty building, suppression of opposition, corruption and economic control as tools of power. Let's dig deeper. Monarchs in Africa manipulate the sovereign laws of their lands to their advantage, using state resources to stage manage referendums that mock democracy and create illusionary outcomes. They then claim that their subjects still love them and demand that they remain in power. They have repealed presidential age and term limits from their constitutions through sham referendums and parliamentary votes. And they shamelessly claim that the people decided. African institutions are under house arrest, held captive by these monarchs who pretend to be Africa's most loved leaders. They control court decisions and lie to the world that the rule of law governs their countries and that the courts dispense fair justice. But picture this. What would you expect of a judge appointed and paid by the president? Or a chairperson of an electoral commission who is appointed and supervised by the executive? Or security forces that swear allegiance not to the people, but to the president? Do you expect them to cut the hand that feeds them? Of course not. This is because the monarchs have destroyed state systems and replaced them with cult-like leadership, where the word of the cult leader is final. Perhaps the most noticeable aspect of the playbook is dynasty building. Puppet leaders turn monarchs position family members and relatives in sensitive positions of leadership, drawing succession plans at the dinner table. It is no surprise that in many cases, the president's wife is a minister and their children are legislators, ranking military officials, or heads of state corporations. The agenda? To hold the country ransom and make decisions that affect millions of lives at will. In modern-day democracy, opposition governments are a crucial check on ruling governments. They offer not only alternative policies, but also a chance to groom new leaders, the so-called leaders of tomorrow. Unfortunately, like the ancient pharaohs of Egypt who killed male children to prevent threats to their supremacy, African monarchs intentionally suppress the voices of opposition leaders through legal persecution, exile, or worse, assassination. But don't be fooled. In many African monarchies today, Puppet leaders even create their own opposition, pretending to allow political space while ensuring these groups serve their interests. From South Sudan to Uganda, Nigeria, and beyond, corruption and economic control determine who gets what and who does not. Monarchs steal national wealth and hoard it in their coffers, turning citizens into desperate beggars without social services or financial safety. The result? Citizens are robbed of their dignity and right to self-determination. You either obey the puppet leader, turn monarch, or die of poverty. Since independence, many African states have been turned into monarchies. Some have fallen, but many continue to thrive. The Bokassa monarchy, Central African Republic, one of the biggest monarchies in Africa, was under Jean Bedel Bokassa in the Central African Republic. After independence in 1960, Bokassa brutally ran the country like a family canteen. He crushed opposition and in 1976 declared himself emperor. His word was law. Infamously, he killed school children in broad daylight simply because they refused to buy uniforms from a shop owned by his wife. Bokassa's leadership plunged the Central African Republic into decades of civil wars and coups. In 2016, Faustin-Archange Touadéra came to power, but in July 2023, he orchestrated a constitutional referendum that removed presidential term limits, allowing him to remain in power indefinitely. This move represented a complete abandonment of democratic norms in a country already struggling with governance. On the 1st of September 1969, history was written in Libya, when a young charismatic military captain, Muammar Gaddafi, led a swift, bloodless military coup that overthrew King Idriss I while he was abroad in Turkey acquiring medical attention. King Idriss was seen as increasingly weak, corrupt, and out of touch. His government was pro-Western, allowing the US and UK to maintain military bases in Libya. While the country earned revenue from oil, discovered in 1959, many Libyans felt the wealth was not being distributed fairly and was concentrated in the hands of the elite. But while Gaddafi overthrew a monarchy, he effectively established a new, personalistic, and family-dominated system that functioned in many ways like a royal dynasty. This was despite his official anti-monarchical and revolutionary rhetoric. Like an absolute monarch, Gaddafi was the supreme and unchallenged ruler of Libya for over 41 years. Although he held no official state title after 1977, preferring to be called brother leader and guide of the revolution, all ultimate power flowed from him. His word was law. Gaddafi treated the state as a personal fiefdom to be managed by his family, much like a royal family. Gaddafi's sons were given control over key sectors of the country and acted as de facto princes. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the most prominent son, he was often touted as the reformist successor in waiting and controlled much of the media and international diplomacy. Qamis Gaddafi commanded the 32nd Brigade, Qamis Brigade, one of the best equipped and most loyal military units in the country, essentially the Royal Guard. Mu'tasim Gaddafi, he was appointed National Security Advisor, placing him in a key power position. Other sons controlled Libya's oil wealth, telecommunications, and football clubs. Gaddafi ruled like a tribal king, manipulating the country's complex tribal system. He lavished patronage, money, and weapons on loyal tribes, particularly his own, the Gaddafi, and allied tribes like the Magaria, and marginalized or brutally suppressed those seen as a threat. The state's wealth was distributed not by merit or law, but by loyalty to the leader. Like many monarchies, there was no clear democratic process for succession. The question of who will take over after the leader was taboo. The assumption, both domestically and internationally, was that one of his sons, most likely Saif al-Islam, would inherit power, effectively establishing a Gaddafi dynasty. The actions of Gaddafi have left Libya in a leadership crisis. Why? During his tenure of leadership, no other ordinary Libyan had the chance to be groomed as a potential leader save for his family members. Today, many people will say Libya is regretting why they deposed Gaddafi, but that is not Libya's problem. The real problem, the lack of groomed leaders, a thing that was caused by Gaddafi's deliberate monarchy plans. After the 1994 genocide that killed over 800,000 people, Paul Kagame emerged as Rwanda's strongman, officially becoming president in 2000. While credited with stability and economic growth, Kagame has systematically eliminated political opposition and press freedom. In 2015, Rwandans voted to extend constitutional term limits, potentially allowing Kagame to remain in power until 2034. The referendum passed with over 98% approval, a result that would make Soviet-era leaders blush. Rwanda's authoritarian system, while delivering some development gains, has created a cult of personality around Kagame. With no credible opposition or free press, the country is effectively a one-man state, with Captain Ian Kagame being prepared for a potential succession. While Kagame has been credited for ending the Rwanda genocide and developing the small East African country rapidly, the country risks sliding back to chaos when Kagame eventually leaves power, potentially undoing decades of progress. Yoweri Museveni seized power through armed struggle in 1986, promising to end the cycle of coups and build democracy. Instead, he has become one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. Museveni has systematically removed constitutional barriers to his rule. First, he eliminated term limits in 2005. Then, in 2017, Parliament removed the age limit that would have forced him to step down, allowing him to run again despite being over 75. Most troublingly, there are clear signs of succession planning within the Museveni family. His son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, holds key military positions and has been positioned as a potential successor. Uganda's descent into monarchy threatens East African stability. With growing economic challenges and youth unemployment, the lack of democratic alternatives could lead to violent upheaval. Chad represents perhaps the clearest example of monarchical succession in modern Africa. Idriss Déby ruled for 30 years until his death in battle in 2021. Instead of democratic transition, the military immediately installed Déby's son, Mahamat Idriss Déby, as transitional president. The elder Déby had already manipulated the constitution in 2018, changing terms from 5 to 6 years and reinstating term limits that would have allowed him to run for a 6th term. Chad's direct father-to-son succession sets a dangerous precedent for hereditary rule across the Sahel. This monarchical model threatens regional stability and democratic development. The list could go on and on and on. In Cameroon, Paul Biya has ruled since 1982, making him one of the world's longest-serving leaders. At 91, he shows no signs of stepping down, and there are concerns about potential family succession. Denis Sassou Nguesso has ruled Congo-Brazzaville for over 38 years, with a brief interruption. Constitutional changes have allowed him to extend his rule indefinitely. The Gnassingbé family has ruled Togo since 1967. Gnassingbé succeeded his father in 2005 in what was essentially a palace coup disguised as an election. The Bongo family ruled Gabon for 56 years until the 2023 military coup. While the coup ended the dynasty, it highlighted how entrenched monarchical rule had become. When leaders remove term limits and manipulate constitutions, they destroy democratic institutions from within. Elections become meaningless rituals, courts become rubber stamps, and parliaments become echo chambers. Monarchical systems breed corruption and economic mismanagement. Without competitive elections or free press to hold leaders accountable, public resources are diverted to patronage networks and personal enrichment. With over 60% of Africa's population under 25, these aging monarchs excludes young voices from governance. This demographic time bomb could explode into social unrest. Monarchical systems create succession crises that can destabilize entire regions. When strong men die or are overthrown, the lack of legitimate institutions can lead to civil wars or military coups. Not yet, really. Not all African countries have succumbed to this trend. Botswana, Ghana, Senegal, and South Africa have demonstrated that constitutional democracy can work in African contexts. We could learn from them and adapt, but that is not all. If we cannot adapt, we have an alternative. The revolutionary leaders of the Alliance of the Sahel states have demonstrated to us that if democracy has been hijacked, we can take our future into our own hands. Africa stands at a crossroads. The continent can continue down the path of neo-monarchism, condemning future generations to authoritarian rule and stunted development. Or it can choose the harder but more rewarding path of genuine democracy, with all its messiness and uncertainty. The stakes couldn't be higher. The future of African democracy and the prosperity of 1.4 billion Africans hangs in the balance. We cannot let a generation of would-be kings steal Africa's democratic future. What are your thoughts? Have you seen these trends in your country? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more analysis of African politics and governance. Share this video to raise awareness about this critical issue. The more people understand what's happening, the harder it becomes for these leaders to consolidate power in the shadows. Democracy dies in darkness, but it can survive in the light of public scrutiny. Remember to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of African politics, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our latest content.